Go ahead and get. Perfect. Welcome to the June 20th Planning Advisory Committee meeting. We are one short on a quorum, so I don't believe we'll be able to take action on any action items, which as of right now, I believe is only item 3 on the agenda today. But we'll go ahead and get started with some introductions. I'm Noah Hausch, representing the city of Cotati, and we'll go to the right.
Chris Barney, SCTA, RCPA.
Adam Garcia, SCTA, RCPA.
Amy Nicholson, City of Santa Rosa.
Jane Riley, Napa Sonoma Collaborative.
Ada Chan, ABAG MTC.
Nancy Waldron, City of Santa Rosa.
Sheila Wolski, City of Santa Rosa.
Jennifer Gates, City of Sonoma.
Will Lyons, Permit Sonoma.
And then we'll go to our online attendees. If anyone wants to introduce themselves, unfortunately, we cannot allow formal participation without a quorum in the room.
Ross Condon, SCTA, RCPA.
Elliot Pickett, City of Roanoke Park.
JP Harris, City of Cotati.
Okay. Last call for introductions. Thank you, everyone. Going to item 2 on the agenda is announcements, and I will turn that over to Mr. Barney.
Yeah, we don't, thank you, Mr. Chair. We don't have any formal announcements today,
Okay, great.
so it'll be a short one.
Yeah, and then we will skip item 3 on the agenda, which are the meeting notes, as we don't have a quorum. So we'll hopefully be able to pick that up at our next meeting. And then going to item 4 is regional updates. And this transit-oriented communities policy discussion. And this is everyone, but I'll let Chris add anything.
Yeah, I can give a brief follow-up to our discussion last month. So there were a number of questions and comments that came up about coordination with Public Works and getting support from the city manager's office on that topic last month. So as follow-up, we were able to meet with the Public Works directors earlier this month and talk to them about what the TOC policy is and what it means, right? Like if there's money on the table and that this will need to be thought about and at least looking towards a path towards implementation if they want to be able to access those funds. So we had a good discussion at that meeting earlier this month. So hopefully there'll be support from that side of the house going forward. And then we have a presentation set up from MTC staff at our July board meeting to talk about the policy. So Daniel Savers from the MTC-ABAG team will be there talking about the policy, giving an overview and answering questions. So hopefully that helps a little bit with the coordination and getting this moving.
And Chris, I just wanted to clarify, what date was that meeting taking place? July?
Our next board meeting is July 8th, I believe.
And that will be the MTC presentation?
That great, yeah.
And is that public or? Okay.
Yeah, yep. So yeah, that's our board meeting. So you're welcome to attend in person, or we have a Zoom link as well. If you'd like to just tune in, watch that presentation and hear what your directors may ask.
And
Yes.
and kind of following up on our conversation, Daniel's going to also kind of discuss funding availability to help with implementation of policies or development of policies. So, which I think will cover a little bit of some of the work that's been done under REAP. And then our next REAP funding is also going to be dedicated to helping with the implementation. So.
Great. Does anybody have any other questions or comments on TOC policy?
When's the official guidance come out?
Good question.
I need a little.
Getting the money out. Guidance. That's not gonna go.
Will Daniel's presentation in July give us a little more structure than we have?
Hopefully. Yeah. And Ada, please correct me if I'm wrong. I did talk to Matt Maloney about this a little bit, and at least he's not expecting major changes to the
Yeah.
final guidance, so the
That's
draft
good.
guidance
That's good.
is probably pretty close to where, so,
We're gonna go with it.
yeah.
We're not waiting.
Yes, exactly. Okay, thank you. And I would just add, there is a consultant from Urban Planning Partners who's available to help if any jurisdictions have questions. They've been super helpful from my perspective, and we've had some meetings talking about that. And they kind of create a matrix to show you how your jurisdiction can comply. And in my experience, they've done a lot of research on all of our individual policies, which is helpful. So then kind of continuing with the MTC-ABAG, part of the agenda, the Regional Planning Program Bulletin.
Which I sent to all of you. I know in your one-on-one meetings with the UPP consultant, she was saying that an RFP would be out in weeks and it will look like months. So in terms of that TOC implementation funding, if we can get out this summer, that would be great. And I think as long as you're working on policies on the other side of that deadline, that's kind of the commitment that people are looking for. So that implementation by deadline is also kind of given that the timing of funding will also slightly. Well, I'm just saying, if you're working on it and you got funding from us, that will show a commitment towards implementation.
Okay, and ultimately, this is all about One Bay Area grant funding that's available for the 2026 cycle, correct?
So it will impact that set of funding, but it's the last of the OBAG 3 money and REAP 2 money that we're putting towards helping jurisdictions get to
there.
2026.
Okay, and then one question I have about that is the ability to combine those funds with other sources. Like that'll be something I'm interested in knowing about.
Okay.
Yeah. So just like if there's additional funding coming out to assist with that, but people are using other sources of funds with it, like can they be combined or not? Okay, perfect.
Good answer.
I'm writing the RFP.
Okay. Yes.
So I hear that I'm being told to allow that.
I think it would be
Thank you.
helpful. I think it would
Yes.
be helpful.
Yeah, because we're expecting to be oversubscribed, so.
Okay, perfect.
Sorry, I'm just kind of catching up here. So you're saying that potentially there will be REAP money available to help jurisdictions. Okay, and do we know how much, or is it dependent on?
It was dependent on the
jurisdictions? Okay,
So the budget, there wasn't that big a cut on the REAP funding, so actually, but I've been working on the reduced amounts. I don't recall how much there will be in REAP funding.
Okay.
But it's going to be allocated. It will not go out to every jurisdiction like the last set of funding did. It will actually go through, that's what I want. It will go through an RFP and it'll be a competitive process.
Okay.
So,
thanks.
Any other questions on that topic? No?
Mr. Chair, I have a couple updates I can give on a few of the other items on here.
Perfect, yeah.
Anita, please jump in. So, Shirag Ravari from MTC, the Plan Bay Area 2050 plus lead, actually provided a presentation to our board at our June board meeting. So it was a good discussion with our board about the regional transportation plan and how that's going in the schedule. So if you'd like to check that out, it's available as a recording on our YouTube websites. We have a link on our website to the recording of that meeting. And then I talked to him and he'd like to have a discussion with this group in probably August about the plan and outreach schedule and everything like that. So, and then moving on to the PCA or Priority Conservation Area grant program, there were a number of applications from Sonoma County and some recommendations, including the Southwest or Southeast Greenway project and a few regional parks projects, and I believe one more. So, yeah, so good number of applications from Sonoma County on that. So I'm looking forward to seeing some of that money to come to our county at some point. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll move on to item 5 on the agenda. Mr. Katz.
I'll come up here to the table and join you on the side. Hey, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chair, and good morning, members of the committee. My name is BC Katz. I am Climate Programs Manager here at RCPA and wanted to take a couple of minutes to present preliminary results from our greenhouse gas inventory that I've been working on here in-house for the last couple of months. Drew, I had a, are you able to bring up? It's not in the presentations file, it is an Adobe Acrobat in the agenda folder. And I can work without it. Is the information I'd like to talk about it is in the included in everybody's packet. But I do have a couple of slides that I had put together.
Drew, if you can allow me to share my screen, I can bring it up.
That'd be great, thanks.
I see brand new computer and we don't share.
Oh, okay.
Of course, right?
Sorry, I didn't give you the heads up on that. So let's see, I know that there's a lot on the agenda, so I'll just go ahead and keep, oh, great, thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
So, and we can go ahead and go to the next slide after that. So, as many of you are aware, our RCPA has been conducting these community-wide greenhouse gas inventories approximately every 2 to 3 years since 2016. Our original inventory back then was done as part of our Climate Action 2020 efforts and was originally done by a set of consultants. And then from that time, every couple of years, our CPA staff has worked to update our inventory and present those results to our board. So you can kind of see, we use these results to compare against our kind of countywide climate goals. And you can see in the upper left-hand corner are climate goals that were originally set as part of the Climate Action 2020 effort. And we've been kind of working towards the 25% below 1990 levels by 2020 and the 40% below 1990 levels by 2030. Following the adoption of our climate mobilization strategy, which was adopted a couple of years ago, the RCPA board wanted to take a more aggressive approach. And we basically set a carbon neutral by 2030 goal where we're aiming to reduce emissions by 80% below 1990 levels by 2030. And that's what we've been working on here, and a number of our jurisdictional partners kind of have also adopted and working on. And so our inventory effort is really made up of about 5 different analysis sectors that we look at. We look at emissions from building energy, from transportation, water and wastewater, solid waste, and agriculture. And within each of those, there is each of those is broken down into separate subsectors. And then each of those subsectors has inputs that goes into them and coefficients that we use to do the calculations. And all of this will be really kind of detailed in, will be included in detail in the upcoming report that I'm working on, and that'll be presented to our board. So I'm working to finish that report this week, and we are planning to present the full report to our board at the July 8th board meeting that was mentioned a few minutes ago. The last thing I wanted to note was then once we have final numbers from the report and we kind of stamp those numbers, I'll be working with Adam Garcia here, our data analyst, to upload that information into our current greenhouse gas online inventory dashboard. And then we will be making those along at that same date, along with the board meeting. Kind of all these numbers will be available as both of the PDF report as well as part of that online dashboard. So let's go to the next slide. So in general here is, and this is a slide with a bunch of numbers, but I think a couple of the take-home messages are, we at the countywide level for the full community-wide inventory continue to be on a downward trend. The one thing specifically of note is that our last inventory was looking in 2020 numbers, and our inventory this year for 2022 values has risen just slightly. My take on that is that 2020, because of the impacts of COVID-19 and kind of all of the oddities that kind of time period brought, that number may have actually really been artificially low by a couple percentage points. And even though it really made us kind of, we were really happy to get those results at the time, I think we're kind of seeing a little bit of a course correction now. I don't need to go into these numbers in detail, other than to just point out in the column there on the right-hand side, you can see that 57% of the emissions are coming still from the transportation sector, 23.5% from the building sector. And if we really look at transportation and buildings as a whole, that's over 80% of our emissions profile. So I think that that's a fact that has been known, but that these numbers kind of continue to bear out. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. These are the same numbers presented in just a slightly different kind of format, really showing for each sector how that trend has shown over the last, this is like, as I mentioned, this is 1990 through 2020 values. So you can see that the building sector kind of has had a steep decline. The transportation has been up and down, has been down the last couple of years. Both water, basically water is the smallest of the sectors. And so that there was a dramatic drop at the in the early years, and then that number has kind of continued to stay low. And solid waste and agriculture, again, kind of fairly standard or fairly even across after some initial declines that we really saw between 1990 and the 2010 kind of baseline. And then the last slide, please. And so this table here, I put some squares, some red squares there around kind of the numbers specifically of interest. Already talked about the top table there, where basically it shows that 80% of our emissions are coming from building, energy, and transportation sources. And then the table, the second table on the page is really kind of showing the reduction from 1990. So overall, we're still seeing over a 21% decrease from 1990 numbers. And you can see the huge majority of that has come from buildings. And also water and solid waste have had incredible reductions from the 1990 numbers. But because those sectors are much smaller in scale, everything helps, everything contributes to us getting these numbers down. But even though those are over 68 and 53%, those are a much smaller piece of the pie. A couple last things I wanted to mention. I'll be working with Adam to bring those information, these results into the dashboard. I'll be presenting these final results to our board on July 8th. And then Adam and I will be working on an upgraded version of our online dashboard throughout the second half of this year, so that we'll be uploading the new results in the next week or so, but then we'll be upgrading the dashboard and bringing in some new features over the next few upcoming months. And the last thing I specifically wanted to mention, and this goes back to a conversation we had with staff at SMART. One of the things that I'm doing for the report and specifically for the dashboard is not wanting to call specific. We have been using the term just kind of referring to emissions having to do with SMART and labeling those as kind of emissions from the SMART system. And what I've done is working with Adam, we've kind of upgraded our dashboards. We really talk about those as railway emissions or passenger rail emissions. And I'm doing the same thing in the report. Obviously, we'll have references to SMART as a system, as an organization, but really wanted to highlight the fact that there are emissions that come from the locomotives having to do with SMART, but wanting to present the information so it's balanced with the emissions reductions that are of a much greater magnitude that are coming from people riding SMART and getting out of their vehicles. So that's something that we're specifically looking at kind of for this as part of the narrative report and the dashboard for this year. So with that, the last slide is just my wrap up. And there'll be a lot more details in the report released in a week or so, but that's what I wanted to share this morning with the group. So,
does the water sector, did you say it includes wastewater too?
it does include wastewater. And I only showed the aggregate waste or the aggregate water number for each of these sectors. I mentioned they break down into subsectors. I have specific breakouts. And one of the other things that will be included in the report that was a specific aim as a specific conversation with staff at the town of Windsor was I am including a number of more tables in this upcoming report that are at the jurisdictional level kind of providing a whole breakout, both for each of the jurisdictions as well as the county and the unincorporated county and countywide, that are really broken out by each of the sectors, and then include things like emissions per capita per person, emissions per household, per employment count, kind of crossing our emissions data with the census data to kind of, and then showing those tracking over time. We heard from Winsor that'd be especially helpful for them to kind of think through how are they doing as a jurisdiction over the course of time. And so I kind of have bulked up that information kind of for this report. So
Great, thank you, BC.
you're welcome.
Any questions? Anyone online have any questions? You can raise your hand. All right, well, I just want to say thank you, really appreciate it, and also I think drilling into the jurisdictional level will be helpful for all of us. A little concerned to see how Katati's doing, but it'll be good to see, and then we can, obviously all of us here, transportation and housing are our two biggest sectors, so I think we just continue to focus on the areas that we can, try to make some significant impacts.
Okay, great.
Thanks,
Well, thank
sir.
you all.
All right, and the next item on our agenda, item 6, is the update on the comprehensive transportation plan from Mr. Buck.
Yeah, thank you. Let me go ahead and I have a brief slideshow, so let me just get that going while I'm sharing the screen. Great, so happy to be here today to talk a little bit about our comprehensive transportation plan at SCTA. So a few of you may have been around the last time we updated this, but we're going to be updating this. We generally update it every 4 or 5 years to make sure we have a pretty current list of goals and information that help inform our funding programs and provide resources for other planning efforts underway across the county. So I'll be talking about what a CTP is, why we're updating it now, what we'll be covering in this update. There's a slightly different focus every time we do this, as resources allow, and then talking about the schedule. So what we'll be focusing on and what our target end date will be. So talking a little bit about what the CTP is, there are kind of 2 pieces of it. There's the visioning piece where we look at where we'd like to see things head in the future. It's a transportation plan, so we're focused on transportation, but transportation touches so many other topics, right? Housing, emissions, all these other things. So there's a lot of crossover that we look into as part of the CTP. We also look at forecasts, right? Like how we expect Sonoma County to grow in the future, both on the housing and jobs and population side. So we take a look at that, and we also look at how that could impact transportation and other areas, goal areas that we're interested in. There's a pretty big reference section in the CTP as well. So we always go through and update that, including updated demographics, information on current travel trends, statistics, and Adam will be talking about an update to the travel behavior study today. So that'll be a major component as well, talking about how people's transportation behaviors changing over time and how that could impact our transportation system and picture here in the county. The other piece is a more administrative side. So it's a guiding document for transportation funding and long-term planning in the county. So all of the counties in the Bay Area produce some document like a CTP that feeds into the regional transportation plan. So this is where vision transportation projects can go in first before they actually go into the regional plan, which will kind of tee them up for future funding. And as we program or allocate funding at the county level, we're also required to have a county level policy and planning document to help guide that process, along with goals and to help prioritize that funding. So funding eligibility is at risk if we don't meet that requirement. So we've started doing this back in 2001. So we've rolled out 5 different CTPs since that time. The last one was updated in 2021. So, a lot has happened since then as far as, travel behavior, demographics, there's been a lot of change since then. So we really feel like now is the time to update the plan. MTC is also going to be kicking off their next major plan update starting in 2026. So we want to go ahead and have this updated to be able to feed into that process going forward. So I just covered most of this, but there are a number of other things going on that are kind of leading to us updating it now. One thing we like to do is track progress on achieving the vision and goals in the plan. So one thing we'll be doing as part of this effort is providing and producing a progress report showing where we're at. One new requirement is developing a near-term implementation plan. So the CTP has generally been a long-range planning document. So we're looking out 25 to 30 years. So one thing we'll be doing as part of this plan is looking at the next 10 years. So what are shorter term projects that could be funded and implemented in that shorter time frame? And then there are a lot of other planning efforts going on, right? I know a number of you have updated and adopted general plans, area specific plans, bicycle pedestrian plans. We're actually going to be wrapping up our countywide active transportation plan early next year. So there's a lot going on. So we want to incorporate that and take the lessons learned from all of those efforts and reflect those in the CTP. So here are the major work efforts that we'll be working on as part of this effort over the next year and a half or so. We're going to refresh the outreach that we conduct as part of the CTP, and this is conducted on a countywide level. So how do people feel about transportation and transportation needs across the county? How do they feel about the goals and how we're doing? I mentioned we'll be producing a progress report on the goals. You know, how are we doing? How are we doing at reducing the emissions? How are we doing at making our transportation system connected and reliable? We'll be updating our performance analysis. So one thing we do is we use our analysis tools like the travel model, big data from our travel behavior study and other sources to look at where we may be in the future. We'll update those reference sections with new information. Another major component is our project list. So we have a list of different major transportation projects in the plan. We also incorporate the active transportation plan project list. And we have a list of different policy approaches in there as well that we'll be updating. And then I also mentioned the short-term implementation plan. So we'll be working closely with our programming and funding folks to take a look at that and identify some short-term things we can do to help move us towards achieving our goals. We've got some major construction out there. I know. So looking at outreach in just a little more detail, one thing we'd like to do, you know, recognizing that there are a ton of parallel and recent planning efforts underway, is to take a look at what's been learned in these other outreach efforts and identify major themes going into the plan. What are people already talking about, right? When we're out in the community, we hear all the time, I've already commented on this and this and this plan, I've said this, right? And we want people to know that they're being heard, right? Like at least at this higher level, like we heard that you want more transit, right? Like it's hard to get a bus, you know, all these other things. So we want to have those identified as we're going into this. So our outreach will really focus on those major themes. So we'd also like to reach some new people through our outreach. So talk to Ross, who's on Zoom right now, about producing some short form videos that we can have up, talking about different transportation themes, doing some pop-up outreach at farmers markets and other existing events, going to where people are, right? Not asking them to come to our meetings. We'll have some social media outreach and online survey and portal. And then we'll have a few workshops and bring information to our public meetings as well as part of the outreach. So here's a quick look at our vision and goals, which we identified and worked with our board to identify as part of our last CTP update. So we feel like these are still very relevant. So we'd like to continue working on these. I know this is very small, I'm not gonna read through all of it, but just to go through the major goals. The vision we set with the board as part of the last plan is really focused on connecting people, right, and places. Meeting our zero emissions GHG reduction goals. So those are the two major focus areas that our board and the staff we identified working on through that last planning effort. And then there are 4 different goals to kind of help us move in that direction. These are higher level. So we'd like to make the transportation system more connected and reliable, focusing on those connections, right? Making it easier for people to get around. Certainly focusing on making the transportation system safe and well maintained, right? Community oriented and place based, and a lot of this is really focused on the built environment, right? Housing and that connection to transportation and where people live and where they want to go. And then finally, looking at our zero emissions goals. So lining up to be zero emissions in line with the RCPA climate action goals. So to help make that a little more concrete, we identified performance measures in each of those goal areas, right? The goal descriptions are pretty broad. And so we identified a few areas to measure progress in those areas. So this will be kind of the focus of that progress report. So what is the pavement condition in each of our communities, right? How many transit vehicle revenue hours are out there? How much delay is there? How are people getting around? Are they walking, biking, or taking transit or driving? Looking at GHG emissions, VMT, things like that. So, these are ways that we can measure progress in moving towards achieving our goals, or we can help identify areas that there's room for improvement, right? Maybe we can find some different ways of making progress in those areas. So moving on, oh yeah.
Can I back up the slide?
Yeah.
So do you have point in time of, I don't know, where is it? Transit or bicycle lane miles or something? Where did I see?
Bicycle facility miles.
Yeah, bicycle facility miles. You have like what it was 10 years ago, what it is now, what it's going to plan?
We have snapshots in our older CTPs we can compare that to, okay. So we can kind of track that over time. And in working through this, we can, there may be new data sources or new metrics that may be appropriate at this time we can identify. So we'll certainly be bringing information back to you as the PAC, also working with the TAC and our transit providers to see maybe this metric, one of these metrics is kind of out of date and there's new information we can use. So we may be dialing this in a little bit in the next 3 to 6 months as we work on that progress report. So, but yeah, the intent is to look at where were we 5 years ago and where are we at now, right? Are we moving in the right direction or not? So. And the format is we usually have a brief technical memorandum kind of going through that and then a slide deck showing charts, showing progress. So looking at the update schedule, we're looking at working on this starting this summer through the end of next year. So pretty abbreviated schedule with a lot of other things going on. So, we'll really be focusing on the most important things as part of this effort. So there are 4 different kind of tracks that we'll be working on, as you can see here, as far as this schedule goes. So outreach will be happening the entire time. We'll be kicking things off this summer, producing an online survey by the end of the year, holding pop-ups and public workshops spring and fall, and then rolling out a draft and final plan at the end of next year. One of the first things we'll be doing, as I mentioned, is looking at those themes, right? Like what themes are popping up in the outreach across the county and all these other efforts, and making that a focus of a lot of our outreach. So that second track's really looking at the vision and goals. So starting this summer and the fall and winter, we'll be producing that progress report. So, maybe revising some of the performance metrics and then producing that progress report. So showing where we're going and where we can refocus our efforts. Moving on to the technical analysis piece. Adam is actually working on updating a lot of the data in our analysis tools right now. He'll be working with you to update travel model data and other information throughout this year. And then we'll be looking at future scenarios starting next year. So looking at forecasted housing and employment growth. So where are people going to be living? And, you know, the forecasts are changing for Sonoma County. We've seen kind of flat growth over the last 5 or so years. And so there are different ideas of where we may or how be growing in the future. So we'll be looking at how that may impact our performance metrics going forward as part of this process. And then looking at the draft and final CTP, we'll be updating the reference sections in the CTP, issuing a call for transportation projects this summer. So working primarily with the public works and engineering folks to identify transportation projects that they'd like in the plan. And we'll certainly bring that to this group as well. So if you're working collaboratively with your transportation and public works folks on identifying projects, you know, there'll be a application process there. It's usually pretty streamlined, so not a long application, but just basic information on a project description, you know, basic cost, when it's expected to be completed, things like that. We'll do some policy evaluation as part of that process, and then work on a draft and final CTP through that process as well. So right now, we're just kicking this off. We'll be taking this same or similar presentation to our board in July. So talking to them about the schedule and the scope. And then we'll have regular updates at this group as well on how things are proceeding. So really focusing on these different areas, right? Like topics about outreach, what we're learning. You know, the progress report will certainly be an item. Talking about the performance assessment, call for projects, things like that. So yeah, just wanted to update the group that we're kicking this off, and it'll be happening for the next 18 or so months. So yeah, would love to hear any thoughts that you have on the process, but much more to come as we go forward.
Yeah, I have a question. Chris, I saw Rena on one of your slides.
Did I have Rena?
And you know, you can't slip that. Right?
Yeah, there we go.
So, can you remind us how this plan will affect our arena next time around, and just reminding the group that the county committed to forming a subregion for arena this time? So how, you know, timing wise, and that process needs to start even earlier.
Yeah.
So just timing wise, I think the timing's gonna work.
Yeah.
Um,
So RENA is going to be part of the next RTP update, right? So the current Plan Area 2050 plus update is a limited and focused update. It doesn't feel like that sometimes. It feels pretty substantial. But the next update is going to be a full regional transportation plan update that'll include RENA and, you know, probably a lot more changes than are happening as part of this RTP. So thanks for bringing that up, Jane. I think certainly a lot of the projects we'll be identifying in the CTP will definitely feed into the next RTP. So that'll be a focus. I think the policies we identify can go into that, the travel behavior information we have, maybe even some of the information we have about forecasting can feed into that.
that's my big question.
Yeah, so and that short range implementation plan too, right? That 10-year snapshot, that'll be a piece of it. But as far as the sub-region goes, I'll check and see what the timing on that may look like. We haven't been hearing much from the region about the next RENA cycle yet, since they're still working on the current.
I just
RTP.
completed my first 7 cycle housing element, so
Yeah,
it's coming.
it is. So
I'm sorry, but it's RENA process is a 1.5 year process. Before the due date of the next housing element, but forming a subregion, we have to go through the same thing.
Yeah.
So forming a subregion is going to be backed up at least another year from that.
Yeah.
So it's looking like 2026, end of 2026, we need to be working on that. And this could dovetail nicely
yeah.
if we don't get delayed.
And, it may be worth agendizing this sometime later this year, just to start a conversation, and Ada, I'll talk to you and maybe planning staff to see maybe what the timeline.
Yeah, I'll
may
talk to
look
Gillian.
like.
So I
Okay.
have an answer.
Okay, yeah, thanks for bringing that.
Not retire before. We need to.
So we can at least get the conversation
Great,
started.
thank you.
Yeah, I forgot I'd put it in there in the context of the 2 pages.
Well, thank you, Chris. Do you have any insight as to the timing of the more comprehensive plan, regional plan?
So, yeah, it's kicking off in 2026, and I believe it's supposed to be adopted in 2029. Does that sound right, Ada?
My mind was still in Gillian.
Okay, guys.
Sorry.
The timing of the next RTP, it's kicking off in 2026.
Yes.
Is 2029 the adoption
I
date?
don't know the adoption.
The meeting process has to start in 2029, so it needs to be just before that,
Okay,
or the state official to be okay too.
yeah.
There's gonna be a lot of moving pieces at that time, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Might be good to talk about the
That's
housing.
time for Gillian.
Next. Housing.
Yeah, should we,
Yeah.
maybe at the housing?
Let's do that.
We can add Rena on the agenda, just
Yeah.
an open discussion.
Subcommittee.
I'll
Yeah.
have my answers.
Okay,
Well, and I'd like to see like some type of a Gantt chart with schedules and timelines of all these various efforts overlapped. That would be super helpful.
Yeah.
To help us start to coordinate resources. Okay. Going to Zoom, folks. Are there any questions before we get to comments? Just really quick, Jennifer. Okay, I don't see any hands raised, so use that raised hand icon if you want to speak. But Jennifer?
Okay, so my question, obviously, like you were talking about, we're all individually doing some different projects. I know that we're already in the midst of our general plan, counties kicks theirs off. Kick off, probably in 2 more months, but, so we're all overlapping and so I'm just curious, that and then Caltrans, whatever they're doing. How did you guys integrate in the past? All those different activities, because they are ongoing and never changing.
yeah. I think one benefit to updating on a cycle is it's never gonna be the perfect time, right? There's always gonna be something going on that we're not gonna be able to roll in. So we'll try and incorporate as much as we can from these ongoing efforts and our current planning effort. But if we miss something, we'll have an opportunity in 4 or 5 years to kind of pick that up and bring it back in. But yeah, we'll be reliant on, these meetings and, personal meetings with jurisdictions to make sure we're catching everything as we go forward. So, I think a lot of that will be happening in the context of maybe the travel model or here, conversations here at the PAC. But we'll certainly review all the general plans and draft documents and try and incorporate those. One thing to keep in mind is the CTP is a pretty high level document. So looking at countywide policies and, countywide conditions. So, the most detail in there is the projects, right? Like if there's a specific big project in Sonoma that needs to be included in the CTP project list, that's probably the big detail item that would need to be included there.
And I'm thinking actually the bigger picture, because I think we're more affected by what happens outside of our borders than what's happening inside of our borders right now.
Yeah.
And forever. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I was like thinking the big picture of like, what's Caltrans doing? What's going on Arnold and Longmont, like I'm just thinking that's.
Yeah.
And then Highway 12. Always. I think.
For sure. And we do, I know the county does submit projects on their plans for different facilities that would be outside Sonoma, and we can certainly coordinate. We coordinate with Caltrans as well on what they're doing. So we'll make sure to take a look at those and incorporate that. So that information is included. And the growth forecast is certainly relevant too, right? What's happening outside your jurisdiction? What's happening next door, right? And how could that impact your jurisdiction? So yeah, we'll get as much as we can, but with the recognition that it's a high level document and we're a small staff, we'll do as much as we can.
I think I say that every day.
Yeah. It's a good thing to have on.
Maybe we should GAN the general plan updates too.
That's what I was, yeah. One of the things I think we could all do is be thoughtful about this effort as we're going through our individual efforts. You know, to help SCTA staff leverage some of those things. So some of the survey work we're doing with our general plan updates. You know, people are gonna comment on transportation. We're all doing ATPs right now, right? People are gonna comment on transportation, and that's very valuable information that I think we could share with SCTA if we're just thoughtful about it. And then that'll also be appreciated by the public, I think, for like, don't ask me again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, just collaborating on the outreach, because we're all crossing into each other's borders all the time.
Yeah.
They're involved.
And I had a few comments, but I want to give the rest of the group here any opportunities. No, okay. So yeah, I think the jurisdiction specific engagement will be super helpful as well. And so if that comes either through some of our efforts that we just talked about and we just share that information, or if you guys could think about just opportunities to get into each individual jurisdiction, I think that will be really helpful. And also because you'll really hear what the regional impacts are on those individuals that live in those jurisdictions. Because I had some of the same thoughts that Jennifer mentioned, with regards to, you know, like for us, it's Roner Park and the county and Caltrans, right? So just all the various factors and pieces that are happening in those areas funnel right through Cotati in a lot of ways. And so that would be really helpful. And then, you know, I appreciate the mention of new data and opportunities to gather data. That's huge, but there's also new tools to offset some of the impacts. And I think just trying to identify some of those unique opportunities, leveraging smart, some shuttle, kind of last mile shuttle things that are really starting to come online and get a lot of traction. Some of the bike share efforts that you guys are rolling out, you know, across the jurisdictional boundaries, because that's one of the things that's most concerning to us, I would say, that's outside of our control, is just regional impact stuff and the ability to try to identify mitigation for those regional impacts for projects in our jurisdictions. And this is a really good opportunity for that. All right. Well, thank you, Chris. And then Mr. Garcia's up, get him some behavior study updates.
Travel behavior.
Travel behavior. Nice caveat there.
Good morning, everyone. Adam Garcia, data analyst. Happy to be presenting to you today about the travel behavior study addendum for 2017 to 2022. The travel behavior study addendum is actually something that's been built off in the past. This is the second one, given its name addendum. The first one being in 2017 and 2018. Both are following the same suit of really looking at cell phone data, trying to understand where are people moving, very simply kind of origin and destination as a single trip. Where are these trips that are happening, a starting point and ending point? You know, the cell phone has to stay still for a certain amount of time to count it as a trip. So all of those then are aggregated, provided, working with Streetlight, but provided by Cubic data provider, to then analyze essentially at the jurisdictional level, and then also 11 unincorporated travel behavior zones. Where are people moving within those areas to other zones outside of the county? And then the measures that we have are fairly simple, just the number of trips, VMT, the average trip length, and then some distinction looking at where the morning and evening commutes change. So this is a map of the different zones. You can see the kind of broken out county areas. There's also, in order to verify the big data, we needed to use actual traffic counts. So those are the traffic count locations primarily on Caltrain's facilities, so we can correlate and understand, match that data with the cell phone data with the actual traffic data. So then we see, yeah, the all the counties that around us that we also collected data for. So lots happened in those several years. As Chris mentioned earlier, something that the county is already going through is just a domestic population decline, but also declines in foreign immigration rates, the devastating wildfires that took place during those years, some pandemic, and then the cost of living has also increased as well. So with all of those things, people, yeah, either momentarily for months or for years, change their travel patterns, think about how they move around differently. So these are the high level results, and we can dive into the individual ones, but so intra-county is saying within Sonoma County travel, and inter-county then is traveling outside. So one of the key highlights that we've heard, and I don't have great data to back this up, but from the other counties in the Bay Area, but the 90% of total trips that stay within Sonoma County, I think is extremely unique just among the other counties that we in the Bay Area. We have a lot of the resources we need here. We stay mostly within our county. And then you can see then for inter-county trips, you know, those you do have to drive quite a ways to get out of the county in a lot of cases. So those are going to have almost half of the VMT and then corresponding emissions for those inter-county trips as well. So just a slight decline from 2017 to 2022, almost 10% in the number of trips for intra-county, and then the inter-county trips, those going outside, just had an even smaller increase. So that's kind of the point I made at the bottom, that these trips, the inter-county trips, though they are few, they're very long and contribute significantly to our emissions. So our trip length across the board, thinking inter-county and intra-county, has mostly stayed consistent. I think the key point that's really exciting to see for me is just that, what's the average trip length for within that jurisdiction? Going to the grocery store, picking up kids, those are short trips, generally, that when we're thinking about kind of our goal of zero emissions, you know, how often can we substitute those car trips for bicycle or lower emission trips? On the inter-county morning commutes, it's largely a reflection of the evening, but we can see that there's a chart that's going to help explain this a little bit better. But most of our 1 out of 4 trips are going to Sonoma County, or sorry, to Marin County. 1 out of 6 are either going to Napa or Solano County. So that's people coming into Sonoma County. In terms of exporting trips, about half of them are going to Marin County, and then about 1 out of 5 go to Napa. Those numbers are a little bit harder to understand, but arrows are a bit easier. And there's more detailed maps within the addendum report themselves, which break out the AM and PM flows. But this shows us at least that kind of total trips leaving and entering. So Marin is our major partner, but we really do, yeah, Napa second, and Solano and Mendocino. So we thought it'd be really helpful to break out this data by city. So we created these travel behavior zone profiles, and I should say that includes all the county profiles as well too, unincorporated county. So that gives us a look at the data I mentioned earlier, total VMT per capita, as well as the population, looking at trips both within the travel zone and outside. What are the top 5 trip destinations of that travel zone? And then, yeah, more VMT trip data. So here's just kind of going down the list, and each of these cities has, or each of the zones has the same data. So on the left is the information, let's see, total VMT is the darker color. But it's really valuable to see that in combination with VMT per capita as well. So we can see, you know, is the population increasing, decreasing down at the bottom? For Cloverdale, we see it's, you know, has a slight increase, and then, you know, these numbers also 49 to 51 to 50, you know, VMT per capita maybe isn't a huge jump. That's kind of what just the scale of the chart is showing, but at least gives some correlation on the trend. Looking up to the upper right of the left page, we're looking at trips within the travel zone and total trips. And then average trip length down below. So again, breaking out what the total average trip length would be versus within the city. The map on the right shows then the arrows are scaled to the volumes of trips. So the intracity is that kind of recycling arrow, and then we can see where the other trips are going. So anything that's going out of the county, any of the inter-county trips are going to be a white arrow. So you can see reasonably, yeah, Cloverdale would be exchanging a lot of trips being on the border there.
Adam, on
Yeah.
that map, with the arrows, what does the UI and Sonoma UI unit mean?
Unincorporated.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry, good question. And then going down below, just comparing the difference between the inter and inter-county trips, and then the VMT as well down at the bottom. So that's what we were talking about earlier, of just those inter-county VMT trips can contribute quite significantly. Yeah, so any questions? I'm just going to scroll through these, but just to kind of get the basic understanding of the data. Hopefully makes sense. So for Katati, some interesting results there. A lot of exchange for Roner Park, more than intra-city. You are unique among
Don't
all
know
of
which
the
city you're in.
Then looking at Healdsburg, they had, just to note, a sharp decline in VMT per capita, 64 to 55.
JP has his hand raised.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Go ahead, JP.
Adam, how do you generate your population data? Because I'm noticing that it's different than kind of, you know, what's published with the census.
Yeah, the population data was tracking by census tract. So if there's something that seems off, we can maybe take a look at it. Most of them seemed pretty close, but it was kind of a close ballpark essentially to try to estimate.
Yeah, ours looks like it's about 3,000 too high.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I didn't know if you were collecting from outside the city limits within those blocks.
Yeah, it might be tracking just a little bit outside the city limits. It's not going into Roner Park, but let me double check the numbers on that.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks, Adam.
And Adam, if I could ask another question.
Yeah, please.
For the communities that have higher, we'll call them, I guess, second home ownership, maybe vacation home, is there consideration for that or not really?
Not really. We don't take into account households data. It's really population based. So if they're registered in that area, they should
Okay.
be counted towards it.
As a registered voter? correct?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
where they're, yeah.
Okay, oh, great, that's helpful.
Not the census.
Yeah.
Okay. Not the census.
Or not for not for voter. It's just I think based off census. Should be.
Okay, is the question, is this your primary residence?
yeah.
Or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
As part of the full travel behavior study that we conducted back in 2017, there was an analysis of visitors that gets into that a little bit. So this was kind of a lighter touch on kind of updating the information, but I'd encourage you to take a look at that document. And there's a discussion of, you know, percentage of visitors and where they're coming from, so that might provide a little. more
Okay,
information.
great.
All right, I'm going through Petaluma. Roner Park. Santa Rosa. Sebastopol. Sebastopol is a kind of a notable dip in its VMT and then back up. Some of the data, you know, we don't necessarily can't understand exactly why there's the changes. But for City of Sonoma. Windsor. And that should be it. So as I mentioned, the report itself is attached in the agenda, so I encourage you to take a look and see if there's anything that stands out, jumps out, that might need correcting, or any reflections. Especially potential uses, be great to know if you can say how this data might be useful in your work, that'd be helpful. And if there is any need to actually look into the raw data, that can be shared as well. There's huge overwhelming tables, but this is why we created the nice infographics.
So my population looks a little off as well.
Okay,
But it may be, so that's where the question about whether it was census tract, zip code, place based, what is the census level that we were looking at?
mhm.
We know we blend county. Other than that, my other question was, can you talk a little bit more about the cell data? So did you pull out all the zip codes associated with that cell data, so it didn't incorporate the other visitors? So when I look at the data for Sonoma, like, because I looked at Placer AI recently and what they're doing, and we looked at one of their data sets for an event that we had in town, that's an example. And we pulled out all of the zip code owner for those cell phone data. It totally changed the information.
Yeah.
Of where people were going within our town and just outside of our town, like what were the top places that they went afterwards. And it's interesting to see just that differentiation between how many people stayed within the city versus the people who went outside. So I was just curious about the pulling of that actual cell phone data. If it was all data.
I think it was just all data. It includes delivery trucks too, counting them, cell phone data for personal use. But I don't think anything was removed. It was just calibrated to traffic volumes. And then it was the cell phone data, you know, I'm sure they use, you know, the city limit boundary. So using, you know, that location data, where did the trip start and then where did it end? I think was pretty accurate from my understanding.
So that just plays into my question about the by population. Maybe there needs to be like a qualifier in there just talking about that it's all.
Mhm.
The limitations of big data.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The lack of granularity.
Yeah, and you can do it like, if you have a lot of budget and focus on pulling things out, you can definitely do a lot. So we had just a little bit to kind of refresh the previous information, so, yeah.
I'm in the same boat with my
Yeah.
general plan. I'm just, that's why I'm getting really like into the nuance of saying, okay, I'm qualifying, you know, where that data is.
For sure.
This is the limitations on my data.
Yeah.
This is all this is what we have.
Yeah,
And this is how it was used. Just trying to get really, just so that people, because like just looking at the population. I've already had this conversation with people who know, they don't like the 11,000. I'm like, no, the census literally says that. I promise.
yeah.
That's not true. And I'm like, I don't know, that's what it says. I don't know what to tell you.
And it's a sample, right? Like, I think
Yeah.
streetlight, I think, is like a 30 to 40% sample of the total, so it's getting that's pretty huge when you're looking at this type of thing, at 30 to 40%. But it has to be expanded from there. There's a certain segment of the population that may not have a mobile device, right? So it's missing that type of information. So there's definitely error. But yeah, it's definitely better information than we had, 20 years ago. So, and it continues to get refined, right? So it's great to hear if it would be useful when we do this again, to break the visitors out of the total picture. That's good information for us to have. We can kind of scope that when we do it again.
Yeah, I think that's what we have a lot of visitors in our town. And we don't have a lot. Still trying to get a bigger picture of how many are primary residences actually in our town, and or how often our secondary homes are actually being utilized. I'm sure it's trying to get that bigger picture. It's really hard.
Yeah.
Even in such a small community, it's just really hard. But that's why I wanted to look at what the plaza was like, kind of showing them out to visitors, but it was an official event that we were having. And so, of course, we're gonna get Jones to take the outside.
Yeah.
But it helps us with understanding who is creating our VMT.
Yeah.
You'll hear my climate action commission talk about all of that, about this visitor.
Well, going in, the data is based on the questions you're asking going in, right? So, yeah, when we do this again, it'd be great to have a conversation with this group again on, okay, what's important? What questions should we ask? Yeah, because the vendors will sell you as much and whatever
You're willing to pay for it.
you want. And yeah, most of it's getting better, right? There are a lot of promises for perfect information, but yeah, it's important to understand the limitations too. Yeah.
And just on that point, there's a lot of interest, I know, from the Sonoma County Travel Bureau in terms of these questions as well, so we can absolutely keep that conversation going when we bring this around next time.
I mean, because I think what all, like, showing from the big picture, it's showing all uses of these roads, right? And so just moves to that focus for the bigger picture, it's interesting, and it plays a role in what our master plan will be for transportation. And then when we get into the minutia of the actual data for a local jurisdiction. Maybe there's an opportunity the next time we, help with costs if possible and stuff like that, to get a little bit more training for that want to participate in such a study.
That's a great idea.
I have a question. We're all trying to reduce our VMT. And I know after going to a statewide conference recently, there's been a lot of discussion about as the economy picks up, the VMT goes up. And I'm wondering what patterns you're seeing in Sonoma County and whether there are ways that we're working to address that, to try to decouple VMT.
Yeah, I haven't looked at numbers specifically of economic productivity or anything for Sonoma, but we could probably find those and do a comparison. But yeah.
Historically, when we're in a recession, the VMT goes way down. So
Yeah, and probably a pandemic too.
yeah. Oh, yeah. In every chart you look at for VMT, there's like a stark dip for 2020, 2021. So yeah.
I had a quick question on the inter-county. So just because to get to Lake County, you have to go through Napa County, or if you're one of the commuters, is that reflected? Or like, is it just saying that, no, we're going to Napa? That's where it's
trips?
I think it's just the origin destination, so it doesn't count Napa.
Okay.
Question.
I'd love to talk to you a little bit maybe later offline, because I just had a meeting this week discussing like what data do we want to track? How do we measure the success of the TOCs and the PDAs? Like, so is it increased bike path miles? Is it, so whatever we're mapping, like, is it resulting in, you know, residents having shorter trip,
Mhm.
right? Like, how is that in reality versus the idea?
Yeah.
So,
No, that sounds great.
I
So-
think this is awesome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this data was not what I had expected, even if it's not granular, it's interesting.
Mhm.
Because I do my path, but I don't know what everyone else is doing. And my path is really small, thankfully. So thank you for putting this together. I think it's just really cool.
Great.
I'm the person that goes to Napa and stays in Sonoma.
Yeah.
You're a Trader Joe's.
Exactly, yeah. We're all in there somewhere.
I would be interested to see, you know, a future addendum to this, because this addendum really covered a lot of COVID.
Mhm.
And so I think most people weren't going anywhere, but have people changed their habits? I know I have. Post-pandemic, to say, wait a second, maybe this drive is not worthwhile, or maybe I want to change my job and be closer to them.
Lots of.
So I think that'll be interesting.
Great idea. Yep.
Yeah, I was probably two of those. I mean, two, especially because, you know.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. That was great. And I completely agree. Seeing the data is really interesting, and also by jurisdiction level, and then trying to, you know, come up with some correlations as to why. And then it also helps, I think, from my perspective, being thoughtful about, you know, what type of a community are you evolving into, as far as like bedroom community, commuting patterns, having, you know, amenities and jobs in your jurisdiction versus people having to travel out of the jurisdiction, you know, that's just super helpful to kind of see, and then also to inform policy changes moving forward and where we're trying to focus our efforts. Great. Yeah. Okay, well, with that, item 8 on the agenda is the SB 743 VMT mitigation banking and exchange program with Mr. Bernie.
Yeah, I can give a quick update on that. So, so I can bring up a few slides here, but, you know, I think the big news is, we have a consultant on board to help out with this now. Fair and Peers is the consultant team on the project, so we're looking forward to working with them. Some familiar faces on that team, so I'm sure you'll get to know them as the project proceeds. We'll certainly have presentations here at the PAC and the project TAC from them. So looking forward to seeing this move forward. So just wanted to provide an update on where we're at, look at the schedule. We're going to be assembling a project TAC, so would like you to consider participating in that technical advisory committee to help guide the project as well. And we'd like to do a pilot, some sort of pilot program as well that is still being scoped out, but be good to start thinking about that now, and if your jurisdiction's interested in participating in that. So as you are probably aware, the goal of this project is to develop recommendations for a VMT reduction program focused on a mitigation banking or exchange program in Sonoma County. So we hope to have some sort of recommendation that'll go to our board at some point next year. You know, it could be a bank that, you know, project leads could pay into to, you know, facilitate or implement VMT reducing projects in the county. It could be an exchange program, which would be a direct, you know, a project sponsor would be able to directly implement VMT reducing projects. So the goal of this project is to look at those different options. Here's a look at the deliverables. So I'm not going to go through all of this. The slide deck is in the meeting agenda, but just at a really high level, we're working with Fair and Peers on additional scoping on the project right now. So a big part of that is putting together the technical advisory committee and doing some stakeholder outreach. So coming up with the mitigation program documents, conducting some sort of pilot program. So what are some, potential project types that could be tested? And actually taking them through the process at a local jurisdiction level, right? Like, how would that work? What are the pitfalls? How would this actually be implemented at the local level? That's the intent of that pilot program. And then the final recommendations that would go to our board, including who would administer the program, how it would work, potential list of different projects, VMT reducing projects, things like that. So here is the current schedule. So we're kicking off right now. We had our kickoff meeting with Fair and Peers a couple of weeks ago. So through the summer, we're working on getting that, continued scoping and getting the project TAC together. So you can see on that top line, there are a number of blue dots. So those are the currently planned project TAC meetings. Those would all be virtual. So just to give everyone an idea of when those may be happening. Stakeholder outreach is intended to happen later this year. So, and the intent there is to reach out to, the development community and other stakeholders, right? Like, how would they interact with this type of program? What needs do they have? And is there anything that would be a total deal breaker, right? So do some of that later this year, have a pilot next year, and then come up with the final recommendations. So here's the focus of the 4 technical advisory committee meetings. The first one is to provide an introduction, talk about key issues that should be addressed with it. So second meeting would be talking about the outreach plan, talking about stakeholders, and evaluating different projects. Third meeting would talk about outreach feedback, effectiveness of different VMT reduction projects, and talk about implementation. And then the final meeting would focus on the final recommendations, so getting feedback on that. So we would like you to consider being part of this project TAC. So the membership, we'd like to have a maximum of 15 members on this. It could get unwieldy if it goes beyond that. But, I think key members would be folks like yourselves, that would be implementing this at the local level. So public works and planning staff, local transit agencies. A lot of the projects that could be implemented or funded through this program could be transit projects, right? So we'd like at least a couple representatives from them. And then legal counsel, right? Like, so we have county counsel online right now to help staff that committee as well. So, so responsibilities would be providing feedback on program needs. So what do we need, right? What do you all need at the local level? What types of projects could be funded? Talk about best practices and, state of practice, and then look at each of the deliverables. So talking about the pilot program, so this is still, we're still developing more detail about this, but the idea is to look at conceptual projects. And, once we have an idea of what the draft recommendation would be, take a few of those project ideas from, project scoping and visioning through actual implementation and, implementing some VMT reducing projects. How would that work? So right now, we'd, by the end of this year, be looking for volunteers to actually participate in that pilot. So, helping develop some project ideas, housing or non-housing projects, and then take it through the process. And then at the very end, there'd be, a summary of the lessons learned through that process. So, talking about, we tried this and it totally won't work, right? Identifying those types of things. Or, there's a preference that this approach would be used over another. So, we feel that is a pretty important part of this process. It you know, it will be good to have some ideas and recommendations, but, you know, there's not much out there in California right now that's actually implementing this, so we don't have much information on how it would actually work in practice, so we'd like to do some of that, so and Fair and Peers is kind of in the lead in VMT right now, so happy to have them on board to help guide us through that. So that's it right now, more to come soon. So, you know, I think the next ask of this group is just to consider whether or not you'd be interested in participating in that project tab. So, and then I believe the first meeting is scheduled for August, September. So that would be kind of the kickoff and gathering information on what everyone needs, right? What are the key issues? So, yeah, that's where we're at. Just wanted to provide a brief update, let you know what's coming up soon.
Great.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions for Chris?
Is this something appropriate for the collaborative?
Sure.
CMT reduction is one of our big three.
Yeah.
That's one of the funding requirements.
Yeah, one of the funding requirements. So
Yeah.
assuming we have restored to a higher level of funding than we were.
So participating on the project TAC, right?
Yes, either participating on the TAC or acting as a conduit for a collection of information from jurisdictions, whatever way it shakes out.
I think that's a great idea.
We're putting together the work plan now. So.
Yeah.
Is a big part of this looking at where development should and should not occur? Because I know Riverside worked with Fair and Peers on a really interesting project to set aside conservation areas. And for us, you know, there's a strong wildfire component to it that could be really good if we.
It could very well include that. We're not to that point yet. I think identifying the key issues, that could definitely come up. So, sorry, my battery is dying, so we're out of, no, it's okay. So that's the last slide, but yeah, I think that's definitely something that should be discussed at that first meeting, right? If the location of development certainly has such an impact on BMT, right? So if that's a component of the program, you know, I think that's an opportunity to talk about there, so.
Just while you're still futzing with scope with Fair and Peers,
Yeah.
I'm still after my calculator. That's both for staff use and forward facing, so a developer can come in and say, if I build this many square feet, you know, what are my options for mitigation? What will it cost me? How much will it offset?
Yeah.
We as staff can do the same thing.
We have it on our website.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
As part of this project.
so I think what we learned as part of that project will definitely inform the final recommendations, but yeah, I'd love to. If you and your staff want like a demo on
Yeah.
the existing calculator, let me know. And we can set up a time and I'll walk you through
I've
it.
seen it. I can't.
Yeah.
We don't process projects anymore.
Yeah.
I haven't really plugged anything in and used it, but we could plug in some scenarios for your TFC stuff.
Yeah, I think that would be a great thing for the group. I personally would recommend it, or maybe just an opportunity that people who had interest could participate in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could do a refresher. We had, you may remember. It was rolled out a couple years ago,
Yeah, it's a
so.
while ago.
Yeah, so we could do a refresher on here's the calculator, here's how it works.
Yeah, that
So,
would be great.
okay,
Good.
I'll put that on the agenda.
Thanks.
Okay, Elliot, Northern Park.
Thank you. I was just wondering with the project TAC for this, you mentioned having public works staff participate there. They typically handle our transportation related items. Wondering if you have kind of an outreach list where you're reaching out to them directly, or if you wanted us to connect you with relevant people.
So thanks, Elliot. I'll be taking this same ask to our TAC, which includes the public works folks as well. So I would recommend checking in with your public works department and see who you would like to represent your jurisdiction on that project TAC. I know it varies by jurisdiction. In some cases, Public Works is taking the lead on VMT and others planning is. So, yeah, so that's what I would recommend.
Great. Anyone else online? Use your raise hand icon. Let me know. I'm not seeing anyone. So thank you, Chris. And with that, it takes us to item 9 on the agenda, standing updates. And one of the things that I would be interested in hearing is if anyone has processed a large development project or has one in process that will have a significant VMT component, that they're looking at how that VMT will be mitigated. Because just in Cotati, I have not dealt with that because we have PDAs and a fairly large, half-mile radius of TOC. And so that to me would be a good opportunity to try to feed into some of project ideas for the pilot program. If we have identified kind of VMT impacts and then how the developers and the jurisdictions have sought to try to reduce those impacts would be interesting.
Yeah.
To me, if anybody has any examples. With that, we can maybe start with the county.
Couple updates. So our Springs specific plan is continuing along at its normal speed. The airport specific plan as well just had its kickoff meeting since our last meeting with this group. It's more of a revival than a new effort. So, but it is underway. It's heading towards finalization pretty quickly since there was already a lot of work done on it. So just keep an eye out for that. And then regarding our standing housing item updates, not too much change there. STC we just received the resubmittal. I'll be putting that online for the new materials by the end of the week. There's well over 100 pages of resubmitted stuff. So it's just taking a while to make it publicly visible and understandable because it's a lot of technical information. But to your question, most everything is being processed under a builder's remedy, and some of them were on our housing element sites. So the VMT was kind of analyzed under that. How SDC is going to be processed is still up in the air since we're still in completeness right now, but I'd be happy to check back in when we have an environmental review process nailed down for that.
That would be great.
Yeah. And that's it for the county.
All right, Jennifer, you want to take the next Sonoma in line?
Sure. So the planning commission just approved a 30-unit condo complex. So that's big for us lately. So we'll have a 50-unit one also still in the process for entitlement. So that's all we've got right now in play. We have obviously we're in the middle of our general plan process, and we'll see what that shakes out as far as any potential land use changes moving forward. Right now, just to prove our budget last night, so that's the thing. Ready to move forward on a couple of one-time things, but yeah, we're moving ahead. I think I talked about it before, but we'll do our second home study, kicking that off. I have that on my list to do. So now that I have my budget approved, I can start getting started on that one. Our inclusionary housing nexus study. We'll do kick off our W-Tran at 743. Since they are consultant for the general plan as well, and get all those started. The one thing that I did, if anybody wants to talk about it later, that I did have, and I think I brought it up at another meeting, is any impact from Sheets decision yet. So just curious.
And I don't have an update for any projects that I'm working on that relate to this group, but Nancy or Amy might, we're sitting soon.
I can mention that we released our greenhouse gas reduction strategy at the beginning of June. And we will be releasing the revised draft EIR, or excuse me, the revised draft general plan and the EIR early fall with the intent to wrap up in the first quarter of next year with certification and adoption. So plan, Amy, any other additions?
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. So we're moving forward with our South Santa Rosa specific plan. So that's actually, it's a pretty large area that's primarily unincorporated county. So we're making good progress there on just doing kind of our first round of community engagement this summer. So that's very exciting. And let's see, our council just adopted the budget on Tuesday. We just finished a pretty big fee study update for our development services. So that's going to go live July 1st. And that's a pretty big deal. A lot of changes there. And yeah, we're making good progress on our housing element program. So we're excited about that too. And I guess one final kind of big project, Noah, I can't really directly answer your question because I've been out for a while, but the Sinead project, so that's former community hospital, that's moving forward. So we are, the council will be looking at a professional services agreement for a consultant to prepare the EIR in early July. So that project will be a big deal. Yeah. Trip-wise and all other things.
Yeah, that could be a good opportunity for the BMT pilot.
Yeah.
Okay, going to Zoom attendees. Can't remember if I saw Raphael from Cloverdale, but we'll throw it up there. No. And then I'm sorry, I can't see the Zoom attendees list right now. So if you just want to jump in.
Elliott Pickett, Runner Park. I can go for it. For Noah's question, I think most of our larger projects are being processed under kind of the larger plan developments and specific plans. So similar situation. Things we've got ongoing, the Sonoma Village model homes are open. They're close to finaling their first production homes. We've got another subdivision for townhomes, the University District, going to City Council next week. In terms of picking a downtown developer, site visits to prospective developer sites have happened in the last couple of weeks, so we're moving forward on that. General plan EIR is being wrapped up, entering tribal consultation soon. And then two things that we're working on that would be helpful if anybody from the group has worked on these things recently and has any good material to share. We are kicking off an LHMP update, the local hazard mitigation plan, and also working on the housing element implementation code changes. So the things that most people here have been working on various types of the transitional supportive housing, processing standards, some of the parking standards. So especially if anybody has good ideas on the ways to organize the different types of housing definitions to make it easier to put in the code. There's kind of a couple different ways that could all go. So we're looking for the best option to make it easiest to read. And that's what's going on in Rohnert Park.
All right, great. Anyone from Windsor on the line? Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and jump in for Katati. So we just had a pretty large ordinance effort, went to planning commission on Monday. So we updated our density bonus ordinance. And I took a different streamline or a different approach. I tried to just essentially take out all the state law specifics and just make reference to them. So that way we're not constantly having to update it to be, so we'll see how that goes with the attorneys, but that was my goal. The planning commission supported it. The attorneys had some comments, but I don't think they actually affected the legality of the ordinance. So they just had some, they want specifics just to make the law interpretation easier if we ever got into that. But, I'm the practitioner. So anyway, there's a little discussion there. We'll see how it lands when it gets adopted by the city council. But it was an interesting exercise to go through an ordinance that had, come from that kind of copy state law perspective and then try to make it still functional, but not as specific with state law requirements. We also, as part of our housing element implementation efforts, senior planner John Paul Harries took an item to essentially remove or address these historic plan unit development zoning districts that we have, and I know Santa Rosa has a lot of those. So we have some in Cotati, but we had eliminated the ability for anyone to have a plan unit development, so it doesn't even live in our code anymore. But we have all these plan developments or plan unit developments throughout the city, and so we just added some really simple language that said developers could build under the plan unit development or the base zone. So that way, it essentially takes out a lot of the complications of having to track the PUDs. And so the planning commission was really supportive of that and fully understood it, but I thought it was also a good approach to kind of removing some of the governmental constraint stuff that we had to do as a part of our housing element. And then our associate planner Autumn Buss was working on Plex housing guidelines, and so those are going to city council. She did a very good job with ours, I thought, and so and Elliot, to your question, we did look at how we organize our housing definitions because Cotati had gotten really granular with that, and we made some updates to try to make it a little bit more contemporary. And so there is a good example, Elliot, on our Monday's planning commission agenda packet that's available online. And I thought our staff did a really good job with that. Just really briefly on projects, we have 2 projects called Cotati Village 1 and 2. Cotati Village 1 is approved. That was a 170 unit apartment project, biggest project ever in Cotati at the corner of 116 and Alder. The developer had bundled that with another project across the street in their financing package. So now they're very eager to have that project approved, which is called Cotati Village 2, and is another 120 units. So between the two, pretty substantial amount of multifamily housing. We don't see why that project won't get approved. And then also it should be pivoting to construction. We'll see if it gets occupied by the end of 25. So it's a very big amount of development for Cotati. We're updating our Santero Way specific plan. One of the things we did with that might be of interest to the group is our plan area is confined, but we're doing the EIR analysis for the entire half-mile radius. So that way it'll allow us to pivot to the TOC stuff. It did require some additional funding and some last minute kind of updates for our scopes with our consultants, but everybody seems to be on board, and it seems to be that will work. And so that's kind of a way I thought to keep a plan on track, but also give yourself the foundation to be able to make changes to implement TOC in the future. And then our most recent single family subdivision, which is just 35 units at the south end of town, is moving into improvement plans. So that's also exciting to get some housing problem finally built, because all we're seeing lately is ADUs. I mean, all of our housing, every housing unit we had built in 2023 was an ADU. We did not have any other non-ADU development.
Do you have more than 10 units though?
We did not.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So that's why I'm excited to start to get some traction. We have a lot of projects in the pipeline, and hopefully they start to get built.
I think Noah, the Cotati Village 1 and 2, is that market rate, or are they doing a density bonus?
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, so it's market rate with a 50% density bonus using the 15% very low income. So Cotati's inclusionary housing is 15%, or we have an inclusionary housing requirement of 15%. So what we're seeing is every developer is using the 50% density bonus at very low, because of those two things just really fit well together. And actually, I will mention one of the other things we did with this ordinance. We're coming up with a Cotati density bonus program, so specific to our jurisdiction, to allow the council to grant up to 100% density bonus, basically to be competitive with the state 50% density bonus law, but push you into working more with the city and not just exempting yourself out of all of our development standards. So that's the idea. We'll see if it actually gets any traction, but it's a pretty, I would say, innovative concept. But it seems to walk on both sides of the line of, helping to get projects that fit your community expectations, but then also meeting the goals with bumping up density. So we'll see if it actually shakes out into any real projects, but we see it as a really good tool for infill. Yeah. And I'll turn it back over to item 10, public comment on items 2 through 9. And Drew, not sure if we have any public comment. Maybe Steve is out there. Okay, so receiving no raised hands, no one in the room, so that concludes the public comment on items 2 through 9. And the last item on our agenda is adjournment. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Keep us your summer going.